Hello, my name is Yoshi Bauer. Welcome to the My Special Needs Connection webinar and podcast series. As a parent of children with special needs and as a professional advocate, I understand the challenge of connecting parents and professionals with the information that they need to serve children and adults with special needs. At My Special Needs Connection, we empower parents and professionals through valuable instruction and insights of experts in the special needs community. We're excited to come alongside you to provide you with information that you need. Let's grow through the exchange of knowledge and the hope of success. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and YouTube channel for new releases. Please enjoy our webinars and podcasts.
I want to welcome you here today. We have with us Crystal Sanford. We're very fortunate to have her speaking today with us. Crystal is the owner of Sanford Autism Consulting. She is an autism and educational consultant here in San Diego, but she serves clients all over the state of California. Is that right, Crystal?
Yes.
Yeah, all over the state of California. She's a speech language pathologist who has her master's in communicative disorders. She's also a special needs parent and ally. She does blogging. She's an author. She gives seminars to parent groups in conjunction with the regional center. And she has been advocating and helping parents and children with disabilities for over 20 years. And she provides services to individuals with a variety of needs, including ADHD, autism, learning differences. And for the past 12 years, autism has been her passion. She actually has her own daughter who was diagnosed with autism. So with that introduction, we'd like to get started. Crystal, thank you again for being here. And Crystal's going to be talking about avoiding pitfalls in the IEP process, particularly in terms of the parent side, and what kinds of things to be aware of, what kinds of things to go through the IEP process without making mistakes, knowing what to ask for, knowing what maybe not to ask for, what the standard is. And then she's going to conclude her webinar talking about services. As a speech language therapist, she's very aware of the kinds of speech language services, but also other services that might be appropriate and accessible to children with special needs. So with that, Crystal, let's go ahead and get started, and thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Thomas. It's a pleasure and always an honor to share with families around the topic of IEPs. So you talked about, yes, today I'd love to share with families how to avoid a few pitfalls in the IEP process. And we know that the IEP process in itself can be a challenging one. And there are a few mistakes that parents can be aware of so that they can know how to avoid these as they go forward advocating for their child. And the first one is being too friendly with your IEP team. Some of these sound very simple, but they can have really big impacts on your engagement and your ability to make movement in the IEP. So being overly friendly truly does serve as a disservice to you as you're advocating for your child with unique needs. We know that the relationship that we have in regards to IEPs and special education truly is a business relationship. And I always encourage families to think of it that way, that you are engaging in a business relationship and you want to keep that business environment positive, but definitely you want to be forthright and matter of fact, and being overly friendly can serve as a disservice. I have had parents who've said, oh, the team is doing the best they can with what they can do. And I've known parents who have agreed to be Facebook friends with their child's teacher, such things. And it really does interfere when situations you need to advocate and put your child needs, because you're thinking that you don't want to do that to your friend instead of doing something to a partner in your business relationship.
Good. So let me ask you, I mean, I know a lot of parents have, told me, well, we don't want to interrupt, our relationship. We want them to like our son and daughter. We don't want to be too assertive or combative. So where do you kind of draw that line between, being friendly, being, respectful, and being too friendly or overly friendly?
Mm-hmm. I think that parents, if they can keep in mind that this is a business relationship, consider, would this be an email or something or that you would say to your plumber, to your gardener, to your mailman? Consider the relationship to be on the same scale as someone who you do business with. And that kind of helps to draw the line. I don't encourage parents to bring cookies to IEP meetings. I've seen that happen. And send birthday card, that I think that is over the top. That is something, if you think about it, you would do to a friend or to someone that you are in a close relationship with. But would you do this? Would you say this to, someone who you pay money to do a service for you? If not, then that could kind of help you determine, the appropriate interaction there.
Good. Yeah. I think kind of a healthy distrust might be in order. I know a lot of parents say, well, everything's going great according to the IEP team, but I don't see that at home. And unfortunately, I think that's very common where the parents go to the meeting and get this very rosy picture of how things are going with their son or daughter's education, when really it might not be as rosy as it's made out to be. So I think I always tell parents, to tape record the meetings. I give them at least 24-hour notice before the meeting and tape record and ask as many questions as possible. Don't just sit back and listen and nod and that's that. Ask the questions. If they make recommendations or they refuse to make, certain changes that maybe the parent would like, find out why, ask the tough questions. And I think that's a really good point you made about a business relationship, because the IEP in some ways is like a contract.
Right.
The school is bound to complete what's in it. And although you can challenge an IEP that maybe is incomplete, you want to make it as complete as possible from the get-go. You don't want to have to be coming back and trying to rewrite it later. You'd rather it be, completely addressing the child's needs from the get-go. So that's it.
Yes, I totally agree. And I have told that to many parents. We talk about that as one of our mantras, is to trust your gut and ask questions. Ask questions and trust your gut. And so if something doesn't sit right with you, it probably isn't right. And you have the right as a parent, by law, by IDA standards, to be able to meaningfully participate in your child's education. And so that comes with the ability to ask questions. So you're definitely right, Thomas. I agree with that.
Great. So your next pitfall, the number one, again, is being too friendly, is being too assertive or too aggressive. So this is sort of the flip side of what you were just talking about.
Yes. And like you said, parents would say, well, I don't want to be combative. I don't want to be, the bully. And you're right. That's very true. And that type of answer can also disserve you in the IEP process, being too assertive, being too aggressive, micromanaging your team members, name calling, all those things. No one wants to be in that of a relationship with anyone. And so that can cause a problem as well. You may want to consider, again, you want to keep it positive, you want to be transparent, and you want to be matter of fact, but anything that can feel abusive or combative will cause the team to lose trust and not want to negotiate with you as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think I always tell parents, keep your son or daughter, their education as the goal. Don't don't get personal. Don't try to attack these people, whether they're doing a good job or not doing a good job. It's better to focus on the needs of your child during this meeting rather than attacking personalities. And I think it becomes very important as a special education lawyer, which I am. If we ever have to go to due process, it's very important to the judge determining the outcome of the case, how the parent comes across. If the parent is seen as, breaking down the process, I have, situations in the past where parents actually shut down the meeting and walk out and slam, the door. That's not good. That doesn't fare well. The judge wants to see that the parents, were active participants, but were respective and meaningful participants. And so from a legal perspective, that becomes a very important part of the case. And I think it's also best for your child. You don't want to spoil relationships that don't need to be spoiled. You don't want to be that parent that's obstructive to the process. And I've seen that before. And unfortunately, sometimes I think parents that go down that route lose sight of the goal, which is helping the child. It becomes more personal and combative, and you just got to come back to that.
Right.
As you said before, be cautious. Challenge when they need to be challenged. Have them explain their reasoning, but do it in a professional way.
Yes. Definitely. Yes. A way that keeps nurturing the relationship, like you said, and ultimately the goal truly is your child, their needs, and not getting into, like you said, personality issues or personal issues, always coming back to the need.
Good. Great. Okay. Well, our third pitfall is being too emotional. So explain what that means, and have you experienced that in any of the IEPs that you've been involved in, and how did it affect the process?
So, being too emotional is challenging, right? Because this is the nature of IEPs is emotional. It involves your child, where there are very, strong emotions tied there. And I have seen in IEPs where parents, they're breaking down crying, maybe they're bringing in other issues that relates to their spouse or significant other. And these things are kind of enveloping the IEP meeting, and we're not able to move forward and make progress with the IEP itself. And so as good as it can be, I really do encourage families to try their best to keep the high level of emotions out of the IEP meeting. And I know that's hard, but that's why I encourage families to not IEP alone, not to attend an IEP meeting by themselves. Bring a spouse, a family member, a neighbor, your service coordinator from regional center, your ABA therapist, someone who has knowledge of your child, who can come and be that unbiased third party in your meeting. That will help as the emotions get high. You'll have that other person there who is able to ask questions and help continue to keep the meeting going forward. But also bring a notebook of questions you've asked ahead of time to help react yourself. If you know that you have the tendency to get emotional, you can have your notes or questions already written out, and like you said, recording the meeting ahead of time. Asking to record the meeting also can help, so that you'll have a copy of the meeting. But it can be challenging. It can be very challenging, especially for parents if you have not yet grieved where you are with your child. And that is what I've seen in IEP meetings. And personally, as a parent of a child on the autism spectrum, having a child with autism was not what I expected when I was, having this child in my womb. I had these dreams and visions and such things, and the child was born. And then you find out that your child will now be taking a different path than what you expected. And there is a space to grieve that and grieve that this dream that you had is not going to happen. And when you do that and you give yourself space to get through those emotions, I think that you become freed up to accept your child and to begin to love your child and experience your child for who they are. And you'll be less emotional, I feel like, as you go into the IEP process advocating for your child.
That's good. I'm just curious, have you seen, with the more Zoom type IEP meetings that we've had lately because of COVID, how has it affected these pitfalls in your mind? Has it changed it at all, or is it we're still facing kind of the same pitfalls even through Zoom meetings and IEP meetings? Or
You know what I have seen, I feel as though parents aren't like the pitfall I mentioned, being too friendly. I feel as though that is lessened because we're not on campus. As parents, we're not on campus. We're
can't
not
bring cookies.
lingering, can't bring cookies, you know, we're not lingering in the office and all those things. And so I feel as though that pitfall has kind of lessened. Being assertive and overly aggressive, I feel like that has kind of stayed the same. People are on a high level of stress. You know, the world is very challenging right now. So I haven't seen any difference there. But the being too friendly, I've seen less of.
Okay. Good. The last pitfall is best versus appropriate. So if you could explain what you mean by that, and then maybe we'll segue into services that are available for children with disabilities. So what is the difference between best and appropriate?
Well, that's a great question, because as parents, don't we all want what's best for our child? You know, if something comes out and it's the best, we want the best one. We don't want the worst one or the least. We want what's best. However, federal law does not require schools to provide what is best for our children. The law says that they must provide a free and appropriate education. So what's appropriate is what is required. And so I always encourage parents to bring the team back. If there's pushback, if they're refusing, then we need to discuss what is most appropriate for your child. Is this a part of a free and appropriate education for my child? And that's what I encourage parents to lean on, instead of, well, I want this, I want more speech hours because it's best for my child. Instead, well, I believe my child needs speech hours because I believe that that's a part of a free and appropriate education for my child based on their unique needs. And then see if you don't get more movement that way. So what's most appropriate for your child based on their unique needs?
Good. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I always dissuade parents from using the word best in IEP meetings, because that really isn't the standard. But appropriateness has teeth as well.
Yes.
I mean, the courts have held that it means meaningful progress, you know, progressing from grade to grade, you know, being able to access, you know, their education, the general education curriculum, you know, based upon their abilities, and make meaningful progress. It's not what the courts have said, trivial progress. Yes. or a trivial benefit. It's got to be something more meaningful. Sometimes we use the analogy of a car. The school district doesn't have to offer a Mercedes or a Cadillac, but they do have to offer a functioning vehicle that can get from point A to point B without breaking down. So, and sometimes, unfortunately, the offer is that junk vehicle that is not reliable, that does not function appropriately. So that's an important standard. And as you mentioned, I mean, appropriateness means that they do have to progress and have a meaningful education. So, and that standard applies throughout the IEP process, from start to finish. And I think one other thing to mention is just the focus has to be on the individual needs of the child. Yes. We talked a little bit before this webinar started, and unfortunately, sometimes the school districts look to what's convenient or expedient for them. You know, that might mean putting a child with autism in a autism special day class, which for some children might be appropriate, but for others, it might not. It might mean that they have to put a child in a regular education class and yet provide accommodations and support so that child can be successful. Maybe it's a one-on-one aid or behavior plans, et cetera. So even though it might be more expedient or convenient or easier for the school district to put that child with autism in that specialized autism class, which again may be appropriate for some children, it may not be appropriate for all. And if they have to go to the extra work to accommodate that child in the general education classroom because it's the least restrictive environment, they've got to do that because it's all about the individual needs of the child.
And sometimes parents might be finding themselves pushing for what's appropriate, and there's precedence for something else. Like you said, it could be that, oh, well, we always do this for the children who are like this, who have this profile. But again, I mean, the spirit of the law, special education, and IEP should be individualized. It should truly be for the unique needs of each individual child. And so even if it's never happened before, well, we need to consider this child who we're looking at right here in this case.
Great point. Good. Well, would you kind of transition into services? I know you know a lot about that as an advocate and whatnot. So in order for that child to receive an appropriate education, services may be needed. And so could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Oftentimes you'll find in cases where children have special education services, related services, that's a part of IDA as well, those that unique special education and related services that meet your child's needs. It could include speech and language. I'll start with that, right, because that's my wheelhouse. So if a child has communication needs of any sort, if they have difficulty answering questions, and also if your child has difficulty with language, understanding language, maybe when they're reading. I think about our kiddos who are more on the mild to moderate end. Sometimes this gets missed if they have difficulty interpreting the author's intentions or character feelings and reactions, those kinds of things. If they have difficulty understanding in their language, they too might require speech and language services as a part of their education. So not just articulation, saying sounds or stuttering, communication encompasses a lot around language and speaking and listening.
Could you talk just a little bit about pragmatic language too, social skills?
Sure.
Because I'm sure you're very involved in that as autism is sort of your passion. That's pretty typical, isn't it, of children on the spectrum?
For sure. And that sometimes gets lost. Who's going to address that? And I think sometimes teams miss that the speech pathologist is a prime person to support that. We have so much training on pragmatic skills and social skills, interpreting friendships, and how to work better in groups. A lot of our kids on the spectrum prefer to be alone and work alone, but however, it's a requirement to work in groups and to be interactive, and so sometimes those social skills interfere that way. Also, again, in text, interpreting feelings and perspective taking. That's a big piece of social skills that a lot of our kids on the spectrum miss. They can't take someone else's perspective. They're always right, or they can't infer what somebody is thinking or feeling. So that it can be definitely addressed through speech and language services.
Sure. What is going on in your experience with how distance learning has addressed the social skills needs? I mean, obviously children aren't in groups when they're distance learning, school's not open. What can be done to help them with social skills?
And that's a really big question right now. I have a really good friend. She has teenage boys, both of them on the spectrum, impacted in different ways. And that's one of her complaints, is that her son, who's more impacted, his social skills have just really, she said, kind of gone down the tubes because he isn't forced to have these interactions, and it's not something that he looks forward to anyway. And so he's just really struggling in that area. And so how do you do that? How do you work on that? Well, I mean, personally, for my child, we're still having her engage in social language sessions by Zoom. And so she's doing group sessions around social skills by Zoom. She's doing that privately. She's also accessing her speech and language services via Zoom with the school district, and they're still working on some of those perspective taking skills, but they're just doing it in different ways, using computer programs and videos and such things. So it's something we're going to have to really be patient with our kids around, but we're going to have to still be persistent in finding creative ways to support those social skills, because you're going to need those skills indefinitely. I mean, we need those soft skills as adults. We need them in so many different areas. And so we do just need to find creative ways to address those.
Right. I'm just wondering about, regression, what a child's present levels might be due to the school closures and distance learning and so on and so forth. Have you, talked to parents about, hey, maybe you should get an assessment, either through the school or outside of the school to figure out where your child is functioning currently, because maybe the past IEP that was pre-COVID might no longer be accurate?
Yes, that is, a lot of parents are thinking, I think parents were thinking at first, well, we'll give the district a chance and we'll see how things go. But as we have continued and distance learning has persisted, I think parents are realizing that they're seeing their kids' skills, like you said, potentially regress. And so I'm seeing that in a few cases, and we're talking about that with IEP teams. And because I'm seeing teams report that we're unable to ascertain progress when they're giving out these progress reports lately because of COVID. We're not sure where the kid is in this area. Well, that's just not acceptable. There has to be a way to determine where children are. And so if we're in any way, I'm telling parents to push back and request some data. That might mean they need to bring the child on campus if they're doing some a hybrid option. They may bring the child on campus to see where they are in certain skills, or maybe we need to request an IEE in certain areas, because we do need that documentation to be able to, in the future, request compensatory services. So
Sure.
it's a big thing right now.
Mm-hmm. And talk just a little bit about compensatory services. What are they, and what have you told parents about them?
So compensatory services are services that a child might require because they've experienced some significant learning loss due to the district's or the team's denial of FIP, or due to excessive time from in-person learning. But if you can document that your child has experienced some significant learning loss, and I think significant because all children, neurotypical or not, are probably experiencing a level of loss as they're not at school. But for our kiddos with unique needs, many of them may be experiencing some significant learning loss. And so if they are, and that can be documented, if you can show that, then there is room, although it's not through IDEA, but case law supports the opportunity to access compensatory education to services to bring you back to the place that they were before the loss occurred.
And it is, definitely a topic for discussion at an IEP meeting in the Department of Education, guidelines, both state and federal. They talk about addressing compensatory education and whether it's needed. And so I think you raise a really good point, which is, the better data you've been keeping, if you can get some recent assessments and bring it to the team's attention, that here's where my child was pre-COVID, here's where my child is today. There's been regression, maybe even significant regression, and that would open the door to compensatory education. And that could be in the form of, private tutoring, academic tutoring, speech language services, possibly ABA or social skills, whatever that area is where the child significantly regressed, then the team, should support that and should address that. So yeah, that's a really good point. Other services that come to mind other than speech language that you talk to parents about?
We also talk about the role of the occupational therapist and OT services. That is also really important when it comes to not just fine motor skills, our cutting, scissor skills, handwriting, penmanship is what we normally think about, but also organization. A lot of our children who have executive functioning challenges, they struggle with organizing. I know, like for my daughter, for example, that was one areas we were going to really hit on hard this year was organization, because her area and her box or desk was a mess and could never find her materials in a timely manner. And so that's something we were going to really work on. And so now that we're at home, that's something that I'm having to support her on. And the occupational therapist, because she has OT services, is working on helping us to determine systems that can work and helping her stay organized. Also, sensory needs. A lot of our kids on the spectrum and other challenges are having more meltdowns. They're just having difficulty to engage, to stay motivated. Sensory needs, because maybe the screen is too big, there's too many people on the screen. That could be a sensory overload. Just being at home and not at school, all those things, and behavior and sensory. So the occupational therapist can support that, and they can support that in various ways, talking about sensory tools that child could access. Our OT actually dropped off a whole package of sensory tools and fidgets and schedules, little schedules that we could put on her desk while she was in her OT sessions and school sessions by Zoom. So OT services can be very powerful right now.
Right. And I think you raise a really good point on the sensory, because I think a lot of times that's missed. You'll see IEPs for children with autism who it's very common to have sensory needs as a child with autism, and yet maybe the OT is only responsible for fine motor skills.
Yep.
There's no issue of helping with sensory needs, and yet the IEP shows that the child clearly has that need.
Actually have a case like that right now that we're in the process of supporting this parent, and that is exactly the issue, that she's wondered, who can help my child with organization and sensory things, and her child has never had an OT assessment ever, and her kid is on the spectrum. And I'm thinking, wow, how did it get missed? So that's exactly what we're working on, at least starting with the OT assessment.
Great. Okay. Any other services you want to address?
Sure. I was also thinking of music therapy is one service that is available. I know in over larger districts here, they have within the district music therapists who are already contracted, or smaller districts contract in, but music therapists who can use music as a tool to help support any of the IEP goals. So that can definitely be something that is powerful for some of our children, is music therapy. And that's something that could be addressed via a consultation and an assessment in that area. If you know that your child likes music, it's more than just liking music, but does music, can music be a tool that's used to help them learn? And that's something that could be investigated.
Good point. Yeah. So basically all of these services are so the child can access their education and progress in their education. So yes. I think what you're saying is music therapy can kind of help unlock the door to allowing the child or giving the child the opportunity to access their education. Yes. What forms might that come in? I mean, just in terms of learning information or calming, reducing anxiety, paying attention. I mean, are those kind of the forms that music therapy can assist in the child's education?
Yes, I've seen it done very well. I've seen where music therapists support goals around actually even learning goals, songs about dollar over strategies for math, songs about social skills. So, what do we do when someone enters the room? We greet them. So around greetings, music and songs can be developed around any of the IEP goals.
Great. Okay. I wanted to ask you too, if you've seen, in IEPs when it comes to services, the difference between consult and direct services. Do you ever have any, issues with the school district and maybe they're offering consult and you feel they should be offering direct service?
Yes, I've seen that before. Often teams will throw out that, oh, okay, well, the occupational therapist she's already consulting on the IEP, so there's no need to actually have a formal assessment, or that's just one example. And so it depends on the child and the needs, but if there's some significant needs that we're noticing, or if they say, well, she's been consulting, well, if she's been consulting and we're still seeing this is an area of need, then possibly we need to have her do a full assessment, and maybe direct service is what's required because the consulting has not been enough. Consulting can look like between 1 to 4 times a year, that service provider talks with the other people on the team and gives them suggestions. For some kids, that could be enough, but for others, that may very well not be enough. And so if there's an area of suspected disability, we need to assess. We need to assess and see what's a requirement.
I think that's a great point. And I would just add to that, if there's consult, I would not understand why there wouldn't be an assessment, because you would presume with a consult, there's a need.
Right.
I mean,
right.
There wouldn't be consult if there wasn't a need, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a need, how do we determine how great that need is until we assess? So, I think that's almost, a per se fault if the district is offering consult services to the regular education teacher or the special ed teacher, but has never done an assessment, because how can we know the level of the need, whether consult is sufficient or whether direct services are sufficient until we do the assessment? So I would definitely move forward with an assessment if they haven't assessed before, and yet they're providing consult services. And can you explain just how to get the assessment process started for parents that don't know?
Sure. There's a very low bars. So your request for an IEP assessment. If there's any suspicion that you have that your child has special or unique needs in certain areas, you can request an assessment by simply in writing. Everything needs writing, of course. Nothing exists. It hasn't been written down. But in writing, you want to let your team know that, you are the parent of XYZ child. Your child is exhibiting, you have these areas of concern regarding your child's education. As a result, you're requesting a comprehensive assessment in these areas. You expect the team to respond to you in at least 15 days with a written response in regards to assessments in these areas. And I believe that something written in that form presented to your child's principal, special education teacher, and school psychologist should be sufficient in a request for assessment.
Great. Well, this has been a lot of really helpful information. Do you have any kind of final concluding remarks for parents?
I just want to tell parents, whatever they're doing right now, they're doing a phenomenal job. Life is very challenging right now, and they've had to take on many roles and wear many hats. And so what they're doing is wonderful. Hopefully they've learned something in our talk today that will add to their skill set, to their toolbox as they advocate for their child. And again, if they have questions, if they're concerned in any way, reach out to the team, ask those questions, and don't give up. Be persistent.
Sure. And give us your contact information, just so if parents have questions, I assume they can call you if they have questions about their child's IEP and where to go from here.
Sure, definitely. Parents can always contact me. Again, autism is my specialty, but I support parents of all needs. And my website is SD as in San Diego, autismhelp.com, sdautismhelp.com. They can also follow me on Instagram, Sanford Autism, or Facebook, SD Autism Help. And they can always email at info@sdautismhelp.com.
Great. And I would just encourage you to reach out to Crystal if you have any questions. These are challenging times, and having support, support system for your child is probably more important now than ever. Yes. So we want to thank Crystal. Thank you for the valuable information that you provided here for for parents. And hope all of you stay safe, your family stay safe, and
Yes.
we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye now.